Want to learn how you can plan your dream trip with efficiency and ease and within your budget? Well, I'm going to tell you how to accomplish just that in this video, going through my step-by-step process on how I plan out my trips. Hi everyone, this is Josh Newell with Travel Dawn to Dusk. This page is designed to make your travel experience easier. I'll be covering tips and tools I've learned throughout the years through my own travel experiences. Now in today's video, I'll be covering my basic step-by-step process on how you should go about planning out your trip. If you're new to this channel or if you find value in the content that I'm providing, please give me a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button or drop a comment in the comment section below. Believe me, this all makes a huge difference. You can find a link to all the tools and sites that I'll be using throughout this video in the description is below, as well as the links to all my different social media platforms. So feel free to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever platform you desire. Alrighty, so my basic step-by-step process follows 6 steps. Step 1, pick your destination. Step 2, create your budget. Step 3 is figure out your flight. Step 4 is lodging. Step 5 is the activities. And then step 6 is food. Now you might be thinking, how can I plan out a trip if I don't have a budget? Well, it's easy. Depending on what your financial situation is, and I'm not going to say it's easy, but depending on what the situation is, either you have a budget that you have to work within, or you have a ballpark of what your budget will be. And depending on where it's going to be, whether international, domestic, locally, you can kind of make the flight or whatever travel that you have to work within that budget. Even international flights can be somewhat affordable if you book early in advance or you book through a low budget flight like Norwegian. There's ways to get a low budget flight that will work within your budget. So for me, it's always about picking the destination. That's how you're going to start the whole travel planning process. You can't really go anywhere if you don't have a destination in mind. So for me, step 1 is always picking the destination. Other people might say budget, but for me and for the sake of this video, we're going to use step 1 as picking your destination. Alrighty, now let's jump into it. Step 1 is the destination. Now for this step, it's pretty easy. There's not many tools or anything involved. I just use Google Docs, and the reason I use Google Docs is it's an easy sharing application or browser tool that you can use and share to other travel companions that you're traveling with. This just makes it easy because it updates in real time. Anyone that you're traveling with is going to see what you put in, what notes you have, and also Google Docs makes it easy for you to put everything all in one location. Whether it be your travel itinerary, the agenda, the booking of the hotels, the reservations, the activities, everything that you're going to plan on doing on your trip is going to be stored in Google Docs. Now I do this for one of 2 reasons. A, it keeps everything super organized, everything together, all in one place for me and for my travel companions. And 2, because when I'm actually traveling, I can just pull up the mobile app, the Google Docs mobile app, pull it up on the fly, it's in my phone, very accessible, and I can look to see what I plan on doing one after the other. I also, if I happen to forget something, or if I'm not sure what we're doing, or I forgot the reservation number, it's all in Google Docs. It's all in one place. Makes it super easy, super convenient while you're abroad, while you're traveling, locally, whatever it is. Everything, all your information is all in one place. It alleviates a lot of headaches, alleviates a lot of frustrations, just makes everything easier when you're traveling, and that's the most important part. You want to be at leisure when you're traveling. You don't want to worry about having different documents. Everything is all in one place. So that's a no-brainer way to how I get everything all in one place. So Google Docs is a must for me and for anyone that I'm traveling with. Now, on top of Google Docs, I did want to make one mention, something if you're traveling internationally. Good to know, whenever you're traveling through different time zones, or say for example, you're flying to London from the East Coast. It's about a 6-7 hour flight, maybe a little bit longer, I have to check again. But it's about a 6 or 7 hour flight, but you're also gaining about 5 hours on the time zone. So this is how I kind of work into my advantage if I have limited PTO or if I'm trying to get an extended time through a weekend trip. Whatever it is, if you're a working person like me, having PTO, having limited travel days is always something to keep cognizant of. So what I do is typically the day before, so say I want to start my trip on Friday, I'll leave the night before on Thursday. Now this will allow me to work a full day on Thursday, just have to take a day on Friday, and on my flight, it'll be about a 5-hour time, or 5 hours plus the travel time. So while you're traveling, say you leave at 7, right? So you fast forward 5 hours, because when you land, it'll be about 12. But then on top of that, the travel time is 8. So when you land, it'll be about 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, and your day has started. And so you just sleep on the flight, alleviate some of the jet lag, maximize your time, and then just start your trip on that Friday, guns blazing. Makes it easy. Have to take one less day of PTO. You kind of take care of the jet lag. You're rested on the flight. I know sleeping on flights isn't the easiest, but it's kind of the best way to maximize your time while traveling. Alleviates a lot of the pressure of not having to take too many days. Alrighty, so step 1's taken care of. Let's jump into the budget. Alright, so for budgeting, what I typically use is Google Sheets. Very similar to Google Docs. It's the Excel format of the browsing site for Google. And this is where you're going to put in all your information on cost of flying, cost of your hotels, the budget you have set aside for food each day, activities, etc. Everything's going to go into Google Excel. I'm going to simply show you how I typically do it, how I format my Google Sheets, and feel free to deviate or do whatever you want with your own Google Sheet. So typically when I'm using Google Sheets, I have it laid down in this format. Each row is going to have a different day. So if I'm traveling Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to have each day broken down in each row. In the next column, I'll have it laid out, which city I'll be in. So if I'm city hopping, each row might have a different city. If it's all one city, you just make it all one city, have each column set to one city. In the next column over that, I'll have the hotel cost associated with each day. Then the next column over will be the transportation costs. Now I'll include things like the flight, like ride shares, anything that you could think of that you might require. Transportation goes in this column. The next column from that will be food. And typically in the food column, I'll include things like food or drink. And domestically, it'll be about $100 a day. That's kind of what I have laid out for myself. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room. Sometimes I don't always hit it. If I have a little extra money left over, maybe I treat myself to a nice dinner on the last day. Internationally, if I'm traveling to Europe, typically I'll allot myself like an extra $20 or so. Depending on what the exchange rate is, it's a little bit more pricier. You're going to spend a little bit more money on food, depending on what country you're in. So just give yourself a little bit more wiggle room if you're traveling internationally, and vice versa. And for obviously drinks, things like beers, drinks like liquor drinks, cocktails, wine, whatever. This all goes in the food column. Now the column after that will be for excursion or activities, and this is just allotted for whatever you're doing throughout your trip. And this is probably the most flexible you'll be. Obviously, it's the last step of the travel planning process, or it's one of the last steps. Sometimes most cities will offer some free activities, but for the sake of this step, you can kind of keep this one blank, or give yourself maybe $40 a day, $40 to $50 a day on a travel activity. And then the next column over that is $20 a day for souvenirs. This one is, say you want to get a souvenir or memory sake for yourself, for a family member, girlfriend, husband, spouse, whatever. This is kind of what this column is set aside for. You may not spend $20 a day. You'll probably just do it all, and maybe on the last day if you're staying in the same place, or if you're going from city to city, maybe you'll be spending $20 a day. Again, the whole point in creating a budget is to kind of give yourself some wiggle room that you don't have to worry about expenses while you're abroad or while you're traveling domestically, wherever it is you're going to. You don't have to worry about money, penny pinching. That's why you set aside and create a budget. So that kind of takes care of this step. Again, you're going to start filling out more aspects of the budget as you go through the travel planning process, picking your flights, hotels, destinations. But the reason I do it in this order is now you have an outline of what you're going to be spending for food, That's a must. There's no way around it. You have to spend money on food. You're probably gonna spend money on souvenirs, but maybe you don't have to. So food is a big one. And as we work our way down, flights, it's a non-negotiable. If you're flying somewhere, that's something that's gonna cost money. Or if you're renting a car, traveling, that's a non-negotiable. And then lodging, you have to stay somewhere. Activities is the one you have to be most flexible with. But moving on to the next step, step 3 is flights. Now I start with flights because this is the one that you have the least amount of wiggle room with. With activities, you can find free activities wherever you're going. If you have a little bit more money left over, you can do paid tours, whatever. Lodging, you can find good deals here and there. You can find cheap lodging. Flights, you're kind of stuck with what they give you. So there's ways to find low budget flights. Norwegian typically internationally offers a bunch of cheap flights. You can go through out of season. That's another way to find cheaper than normal flights. But at the end of the day, there's an amount that you're gonna have to pay. And this is the one that you have to do if you're traveling internationally or domestically. There's no way around it. You have to book a flight somewhere. Versus activities, you can choose not to do activities. And hotels, you can always go opt for a cheap hotel. So what I use to find flights that typically fit within my budget is I'll use an app called, or site called Skyscanner. Now this site is based out of Ireland, or the company's based out of Ireland. It's used through 30 different languages. Over 100 million users use it per month, and it's my favorite go-to site to use when booking a flight. Now what you do is you typically just go on the site, you type in or you search the city that you're going to, what airport you're leaving from, what your travel dates are, and how many passengers are going to be. So if it's just for yourself, you just put 1, and then you search. And what it's going to do, it's going to pull together a whole bunch of data of different flights offered from different airlines on different sites like Expedia, Booking.com, or directly from the airline itself. It's going to find you the best rates, least amount of travel time, so least amount of stops. It's a great tool, all-inclusive, gives you a pretty powerful look at all the different options you have out there, which is super useful, comes in super handy for myself, and this is the one that I always use to find good flights. I'm probably going to do another video on a little bit more in depth on how you can maximize your search and maximize the results and get the best results. But this is the tool that I always use for finding flights. One thing I will make a note of though is you will probably want to do incognito mode when using Skyscanner. So that's just Control Shift N in Google Chrome. And why you want to do this is because Google will sometimes save your data. And if you're a frequent flyer or if you've been searching for flights recently, sometimes they might get you at a higher price than someone who doesn't use Skyscanner often because Google has all that data saved in your browser. Now it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it will, and why risk it? Just go into incognito mode, private browser, search to find and get the best rates using Skyscanner. Now, one last note on picking out a flight. Most important thing is you want to find a flight that fits within your budget and leaves within a time frame that works for you. And you can always set these parameters within the tool. I'll use another video to basically do a how-to on Skyscanner, get the best results, but it's pretty easy to use. And that's basically the main thing that you want to do is find a flight that fits within your budget, works within the time frame, leaves when you want to, and just works within your schedule. Now, moving on to step 4, lodging. Now, with flights taken care of, it's time to move on to lodging. Now, this step, I typically use 2 tools. My 2 favorite tools are Hotels.com and Airbnb. Now, my preferred site to use is Hotels.com. When I'm going to the cities, or when I'm going to, say, a national park, or somewhere out in the suburbs, or maybe near a beach, sometimes I'll typically use Airbnb. Now, there's pros and cons to both of which I'll cover in another in-depth video covering both sites. Now, what I want to cover is just how to basically use the tools to maximize your searches, or what you want to find, what you're gonna want to do. And this is just my personal preference, how I go about picking my spot or hotel or Airbnb, wherever I'm staying, lodging. I typically opt for location. Now, I do this for one of 2 reasons. A, I want to maximize my experience. So being in the heart of a city is a little bit more important to me than opting for luxury outside of the city. And then two, it's usually closer to food options, and it's going to be closer to the activities I plan on doing throughout the city. So it maximizes my time, and in my opinion, maximizes my experience. But that's a personal preference. Some people watching this might think, I like luxury. I don't care about being in the heart of the city. I just kind of want to be near it and enjoy myself at my hotel with nice amenities, and I'll travel into the city when I feel like it. If that's you, great. That's just not who I am, not what I personally go towards, but to each their own. Everyone's different, everyone's built a little bit different. Now, how you want to use the site is you're going to go into the tool, hit search. You're going to search the location that you're visiting, the days that you'll be staying there, and it's going to populate a bunch of different locations or a bunch of different hotels or Airbnbs, whichever site that you chose or opted to use. They're both very similar on how you use them. But what you want to look for, in my opinion, is what I want to look for is the location is first. Is it in the heart of the city? And then B, is it clean? I don't really care for the amenities all that much, although they're nice. What I care about is location and is it clean? Because those are very important to me. After a long day of traveling, going on tours, going to a bunch of restaurants, I just want to lay down in a clean bed. Don't really care about anything else. I just want it to be clean, and I want to be near everything that I'm going to in that day. So that's how I go about searching for my hotel. Best way to do this is on hotels.com. I typically go for 8.5 and above on stars. And then for Airbnb, it's about 4 to 4.5, typically 4.5 and up is typically what I'll look for in Airbnb. And then obviously it has to fit within your price range. If you're on a budget, you might have to go a little bit outside of the city. If you have a bunch of money, then the world's your oyster. But you just kind of have to find something that works within your budget, works with your preferences, and everybody's a little bit different. Now, with lodging taken care of, it's time to move on to the 5th step in my travel planning process, picking out the activities. Now, I saved this one kind of for last because it's the most flexible option you have when traveling. And I say this because there are so many free options to do in a city, national park, wherever you're going. You just have to look harder for them, but they're there. There's a lot of free activities you can do. If you have a little bit more money left over, however, you can pay for some fancy tours, maybe a little boat cruise, maybe I want to say beer cruise, but I think they do offer beer cruises, but I was going to go more for a beer tour or wine tour or whatever you want to on your tour. Have fun with it. At this point, you kind of have the hotels, the flights, everything up to this point taken care of in your budget. So if you have money left over, bang it out, have fun, go crazy. And that's why I kind of save this one for last. It's kind of the easiest one to work with, and the tools that I use for activities are TripAdvisor, Pinterest, AllTrails, and Viator. I can jump in each one a little bit later in another video, but in depth. But on a high level, Pinterest I use for finding out other bloggers. So I'll search in Pinterest. If I'm traveling to London, I'll do London travel itinerary, and a bunch of sites will populate. You can go through there, see what they list, see what catches your eye, cherry pick different ideas, kind of jot them down, see what meets your eye. Everyone's different, everyone has different preferences. So just pick out what you think you would enjoy. TripAdvisor, typically you just type in the location you're going to, so say London, and then you look at the top things to do, kind of go through those, look at the reviews, see what looks intriguing to you, what catches your eye, what you would find interesting when you're traveling to London. Viator, very similar to TripAdvisor. Actually, I think TripAdvisor owns Viator. And you just search, say London, time you're going, and it's going to populate a bunch of popular tours that you can use or look through depending on what you want to do, and find out a top tour, say a boat cruise, or maybe you want to go to Top of the Shard, or maybe you want to go food tasting, whatever tour you may want to do. You jot those down. And then I saved AllTrails for last, and it's purely used for finding good hiking trails. This is what I use when I go to national parks, or maybe I'm in a city and I want to get lost for a little bit, leave the hustle and bustle of the city. I can find a nice little trail to go hike around. So that's the main gist of how you use each tool. Now don't look at all these blogs and all these different lists and think, hey, I have to do all these different things. No, just pick out what you think you would have the most fun doing. This is your trip after all. It's your dream trip, so you do all the things that you would love doing. Now one thing I do want to note is when you're picking out your travel or picking out your activities, you're going to want to bunch them up together depending on location. So what I mean by this is if you're in a region of London, say you're next to Westminster Abbey, you're going to pick a lot of activities that are generally in that area for the day. And then the next day, say you want to spend it near the financial district or near the London Bridge, or not the London Bridge, but Tower Bridge, and you're going to want to do a bunch of activities in that region of the city. Now you do this for one of two reasons. A, it's going to save you a bunch of time. You're not doing something in Westminster Abbey, then going all the way to the Tower or London or Tower Bridge. You kind of stick to one spot and you hop around to a bunch of different activities. You're going to be able to do a lot more, and it's going to save you a lot more headaches because you're not going from point A to point B all across the city, wasting a bunch of time, maybe sitting in traffic, figuring out how to get to X, Y, and Z. No, you're just kind of all together, enjoying the city, taking in the sights, and enjoying yourself. So hey, it's going to save you a bunch of time and a lot of headaches. B, it's going to save you some money too, because you're not spending a bunch of money on, say, metro or taxis or ride shares to get from point A all the way to point B. Everything's pretty much walking distance. So save yourself the headaches, save yourself the time and money, and just plan your activities generally in one area of the city for one day, and then another part of the city and another. And it's going to make your trip a whole lot easier and a lot smoother, and gives you time just to enjoy yourself and get lost in the destination that you're going to. So that pretty much takes care of all the steps in my travel planning process. The last one, step 6, is food. This is almost like an asterisk, an optional one, but you don't ever want to be traveling somewhere, especially somewhere new, especially if it's somewhere abroad, in an international location, and get stuck at a crappy restaurant, a touristy trap restaurant that sucks, and the food's low quality, and it's very expensive. There's nothing that puts a damper on your day than having a crappy last meal to end it. So to avoid all this, and I've learned this the hard way, I've been to plenty of tourist traps before, I always use an app called Yelp. This is my go-to for everything. I use it locally, I use it internationally, I use it everywhere. It is a lifesaver. And it's so easy to use. You can just pull it up on your phone. It's a phone application. It also has a browser. You just search the location. It's your current location, or if you want to pre-plan, say you want to go somewhere in London, you can search it all the way from Florida, search London, and it's going to populate all the top restaurants, all the highly rated restaurants that are on Yelp, that use Yelp in your location. If you're traveling and planning on traveling somewhere, you can research a bunch of restaurants that catch your eye. Or if you're, lunchtime in London, you're super hungry, have no idea what's around you, pop up in the app, search current location, and it's going to populate all the foods in in your vicinity. If you're gonna, have a particular taste or particular craving, say you want burgers, you can type in burgers, and it's going to populate all the top restaurants that have burgers in your location. I cannot stress how amazing this app is. I love it. It's all I use. I swear by it. Now, if you don't want to use Yelp, highly recommend that you use Yelp. But if you don't want to use Yelp, you can use Google, or you can use other blogs. Google will have a list. I don't trust it as much as I do Yelp. I've never been disappointed with Yelp. Although you do have to use 4 stars and above if you ever go somewhere. 4 stars and above is my rule of thumb, and at least 20 to 30 reviews. But using Google, you can also search, food locations. Not as good as Yelp. Not everyone uses Google reviews. So not as quantifiable or not as reliable as Yelp. The other option is to use other blogs. On Pinterest, for example, you can search food in London. They're gonna have a bunch of lists of places that they eat or ate at. Again, you're going off their opinion. It's not a consensus. So not as reliable either, but those are 2 other ways to go about it. The last thing you want to do maybe is search the location you're going to. If it's abroad, say London delicacies or London food in London, and it's going to populate a bunch of things that maybe that you've never experienced before that you want to try. Again, get an idea of food that you want to try that's in London, that's maybe not in the place or offered in the place that you're coming from, and then go to Yelp and type in that food, say it's a meat pie, and Yelp's gonna populate all the top restaurants that have meat pies. Again, Yelp, you have to use it. You don't have to, but I recommend it. So that takes care of all my steps 1 through 6, picking the destination, going through the budget, flights, lodging, activities, food. The last little bit of advice that I have for you is just have fun. Do not overplan. I've done this so many times. I cannot stress it enough. You do not want to go somewhere and have to be stuck to a timeline. Stuck doing something every hour on the hour. No, do not do that. I've done this and it sucks because you get stuck on your timeline. If you miss something, you get pissed off. If you're running behind, you're stressed out. It's awful. Just plan out a few things to do each day and then plan for the unexpected. Just leave the rest of your day kind of open to enjoy the city, enjoy what you're doing. Maybe you get stuck drinking with your friends or your travel companions, having a few beers along the river in London. Or maybe you're going about and you meet a group of people on one of your tours and they talk about this wine tour that they're doing later, or there's food tour they're doing later, and you sign up and you want to do that. Allow for there to be time to do the unexpected on your trip. Things are going to come up. You're going to thank yourself later. Do not overplan and just have fun. Lastly, make sure to click the link above to get your free copy of my sample itinerary pre-built to help you plan your trip like a pro. Basically, it's going to go through all the steps that I covered today and a step-by-step process that will make your travel planning process a lot easier. Now, if you found today's content at all helpful or valuable, please give me a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button and you'll get a notification each time I release a new piece of content. And also, feel free to drop something in the comment section below. Tell me what your biggest piece of travel advice is. Share it with me, share it with the rest of the viewers, or tell me where you're going to next. I'd love to hear it. Now, appreciate you all listening. Have a good day. I'll see you all soon.